Hi everyone, I would like to welcome you all to today's session. I'm Monica from the Zoho Books team. In this session, we will be focusing on the topic of handling GST filing, e-invoicing and e-bills in Zoho Books. As you are aware that Zoho Books is a cloud-based GST compliant double entry accounting application that enables business owners, even without accounting background, to perform core accounting tasks. You can swiftly generate GST compliant invoices and estimates, track expenses and bills, etc. Since Zoho is a registered GST Suvidha provider, you can also connect Zoho Books with the IRP and with eWaybill portal easily. Let's quickly look into the agenda for today's session. Today's session is divided into 3 parts. In the first part, we will begin by exploring how to set up GST details in Zoho Books and seamlessly file various GST returns, and we will discuss on the invoice management system. Additionally, we will look into GST reports generated automatically based on the transactions recorded in your Zoho Books organization. In the second part, we will focus on the process of generating e-invoices, ensuring compliance with GST regulations, and simplifying invoicing for your business. While in the third part, we will cover how to generate e-bills directly within Zoho Books, streamlining your logistics and transport documentation for a smooth GST experience. In the end of the session, we will conclude with a quick recap and a Q&A session. Now, let's begin the session. If your business has been registered for GST, you can configure taxes in your Zoho Books. Before you start filing your returns, you will have to configure GST in Zoho Books. Under GST Settings tab, you have to enter the details relating to your GST. You have to mention the GSTIN number, the business legal name, business trade name, the GST registered on date, and if you would like to enable a reverse charge in sales transaction, you can enable that option. If your business is into import or export, then you can choose my business is involved in SEZ or overseas trading. Also, if you are providing digital services to your overseas customer, then you can enable that option. One of the major prerequisites that has to be followed in order to file your GST returns from Zoho Books is that to set up online filing settings. In this tab, you would have to mention the GSTN username via which you log into your GSTN portal, the reporting period such as quarterly or monthly. If you are into QRMP scheme, you can choose the QRMP scheme option here. Once done, the GST returns will be generated on quarterly basis and the reporting period will be monthly. The next option is to choose the generate first tax return from. Since I have chosen the period as April 2023, all the GST returns in my Zoho Books organization will be generated only from that period. And I will not be able to generate the returns prior to this period. Zoho Books enables you to set up an approval workflow for filing your GST returns to ensure that the returns filed are error-free. If your organization has multiple users in Zoho Books, setting up an approval workflow will make sure that the approvers, that are admins or accountants of the organization, verify the returns before it is submitted and filed. And user will be able to file the returns only after the approver accepts what the user had submitted. Also, you have to ensure that you have enabled API access in the GSTN portal. Only then your Zoho Books will be connected with the GSTN portal and you will be able to push the transactions and file the returns via Zoho Books. Once you have configured the GST settings in Zoho Books, you will be able to mention the GST details while adding your customers or vendors. Also, once you add your customer or vendor's GSTIN, you will be able to fetch the details from the portal. Once you have added the GSTIN, you can get the taxpayer details of that particular GSTIN by clicking on Get Taxpayer Details as shown here. These are the various GST returns that can be filed via Zoho Books. Now let us understand the steps that has to be followed in order to file each of these GST returns in detail. Summary of Outward Supplies or GSTR 1 is a monthly or quarterly return that contains the details of outward supplies of goods or services made by a regular taxpayer registered under GST. The due date to file Form GSTR1 for a given tax period is 11th day of the succeeding month in case of taxpayer filing it monthly, and last date of month succeeding the end of every quarter in case of taxpayer filing it quarterly. If your business turnover is more than 5 crores, then you can opt for monthly filing, whereas your business turnover is less than 5 crores, you can opt for quarterly filing. These are the list of businesses which are not applicable for GSTR1, and if your organization is one amongst them, then you're not applicable for filing GSTR1. Now, let us understand the steps that has to be followed in order to file GSTR1 via Zoho Books. In order to file GSTR1, navigate to the GST filing module in your Zoho Books. You will be able to see the various GSTIN which you have added in Zoho Books, and the view return option will be shown only if you have enabled GST filing for that particular GSTIN. Once you click on view return option, in the following page you will be able to see all your monthly, quarterly and annual returns for that particular GSTIN. Since I have chosen the generate first tax return from period as April 2023, I will be able to start filing the returns only from that period. The all transaction section shows the transactions which I have recorded in Zoho Books for that particular period, and the unpushed section shows the transactions those are yet to be pushed to the GSTN portal. In the overview page, you will be able to see the transactions which you have recorded in Zoho Books being automatically categorized under various sections, and you can click on each one of the section to have a detailed view of those transactions. The push to GSTN tab shows the transaction summary, HSN, NIL and B2CS and document issued. Under document issued, you would have to enter the first and the last serial number of each of the document, the total number of documents and the total number of documents cancelled, and based on the data that you enter, the net issued will be automatically calculated. Once done, the next step is to push the transactions to the GSTN portal by clicking on push to GSTN button. Once done, you will be asked to generate the OTP, and the OTP will be sent to your registered mobile number by the GSTN. Once you enter the OTP, the transactions will be scheduled and it will be pushed to the GSTN portal. After pushing the transactions to the GSTN portal, if you would like to make any changes, you can click on the reset push button. Once done, the push will be reset. You can make the necessary changes and push the transactions once again to the GSTN portal. Also, if there are any failure in the push, you will be receiving a mail from Zoho Books regarding the same, and you can view the failed transaction along with the error messages under the failed transactions tab. You can later make the necessary corrections and once again push the transactions to the portal. Once the transactions are pushed successfully to the portal, the next step is to file your returns. You can either file the return online or mark it as filed if you have filed the returns manually in the GSTN portal. Once you file the returns in Zoho Books, the transactions under that period will be logged and you will not be able to make any changes. If you would like to make any modifications, you would have to click on mark as unfiled option, make the necessary changes and once again mark it as filed. Now let us understand about invoice management system with a simple example. Let us consider that you are purchasing goods or services from your vendor and you pay GST on those purchases. You can then claim ITC for the sales made from those goods or services. However, you can claim the ITC only if your vendor has filed the sales in their GSTR1, 1A or IFF. If the vendor fails to file GSTR1 or reports incorrect information, then you may not be able to claim the credit. This is where the IMS comes into picture. The IMS simplifies this process by ensuring that only accurate and valid transactions are considered for ITC claims. The transactions that do not have reverse charge and are eligible for ITC reported by a supplier in GSTR1 or 1A or 1FF will be displayed on the IMS inward supplies dashboard. You can then accept or reject or mark these transactions as pending. The taxpayers can modify these actions on the transactions until they file Form GSTR 3B for the month. On 14th October 2024, the IMS was implemented. So before this was implemented, all the taxpayers will be filing GSTR 1 first, followed by GSTR 2B reconciliation and GSTR 3B filing. Since this is implemented now, the new flow would be GSTR 1 filing followed by IMS and then GSTR 2B reconciliation and 3B filing. These are the various actions that can be taken under IMS Inward Supplies dashboard. If you do not take any action for a particular transaction under IMS, that transaction will be accepted as deemed accepted in the time of GSTR 2B generation. And all the accepted transaction will be a part of GSTR 2B, while the rejected transaction will not be a part of GSTR 2B. And if you mark any transaction as pending, it will not be considered in GSTR 2B and it will be carried forward in IMS itself in the future periods. Now let us understand how we can handle IMS in Zoho Books. To access IMS, you have to navigate to IMS dashboard in Zoho Books and click on View Summary. In the following page, you will be able to see the option to pull the transactions from the GSTN portal. Once you click on the Pull from GSTN button, you will be able to see the transactions which has been pulled from the GSTN portal being automatically categorized under various tabs in Zoho Books. So here you will be able to see the B2B invoices, debit notes, credit notes and e-commerce invoices. Once you have pulled the transactions from the GSTN portal, the next step is to review the transaction. So the review transaction tab consists of matched, partially matched, missing in Zoho Books and reviewed sections. The Match tab shows the Zoho Books transaction which matches exactly with the transaction which has been pulled from the GSTN portal. Whereas the Partially Matched tab shows the Zoho Books transaction that does not match exactly with the transaction which has been fetched from the GSTN portal. This could be due to the minor difference in the vendor's GSTIN or the transaction date or transaction amount, etc. So here you can take various actions such as accept or mark it as pending. Once you accept or mark it as pending, you will be able to see that this transaction being moved to the review tab. The missing in Zoho Books tab shows the transactions which are present in the GSTN portal but not in Zoho Books. Here you will be able to take actions such as reject or mark as pending. Here the accept action will not be shown as this transaction itself is not available in Zoho Books. All the reviewed transactions will be shown under Review tab, and here again you can perform actions such as accept, marked as pending or marked as no action. Once you have reviewed the transaction, the next step is to push the reviewed transaction to the GSTN portal. Before pushing the transaction to the GSTN portal, we recommend you to pull the transactions from the portal to ensure its consistency. Also, if any actions that were performed here after GSTR 2B cutoff date, you would have to regenerate the GSTR 2B. Once the transactions are pushed, you can either revert the actions of the transaction to the default state or change the action in the Review tab of the Review Transaction section. By clicking on Proceed here, the transactions will be scheduled and it will be pushed to the GSTN portal. Once the transactions are pushed successfully to the GSTN portal, you will be receiving an in-app notification. However, if it has been failed, you can check the failed transaction by clicking on the failed transactions over here, like how we saw the failed transaction, the GSTR 1. Now, let us look into the GSTR 2A and 2B reconciliation. GSTR 2A is a tax return that contains the details of your monthly purchases or inward supplies. The due date for filing from GSTR 2 is the 15th of the month succeeding the tax period. A GSTR 2A report will be auto-populated in the GSTN portal when your vendors have filed their sales return, GSTR 1, so that you can verify all the data before you file your return. Whereas GSTR 2B is auto-drafted ITC statement generated for every taxpayer on the basis of the information furnished by your supplier in GSTR 1. The major differences between GSTR 2A and 2B is that GSTR 2A is dynamic return that constantly updates, when invoices are uploaded by the supplier, whereas GSTR 2B is a static return that is updated every month. The purpose of filing GSTR 2A is to reconcile with your supplier's data which is uploaded in the GSTN portal, whereas GSTR 2B is for ITC claiming and compliance reference. GSTR 2A does not include ITC statement, whereas GSTR 2B includes the ITC statements such as eligible or ineligible. And GSTR 2A is ideal for continuous monitoring, whereas GSTR 2B is for GST filing and claiming ITC. Now let us understand the various steps that is involved in reconciling GSTR 2 and GSTR 2B in Zoho Books. Whatever purchase transactions that you have recorded for that period will be included in the GSTR 2 and 2B. The process of GSTR 2 and 2B is similar to each other. The first step is to creating the purchase transactions, and the next step is to fetching the transactions from the GSTN portal which your vendor has uploaded. Once you fetch the transactions from the GSTN portal to Zoho Books, you will be able to see that those transactions being automatically categorized under various sections such as matched, partially matched, missing in Zoho Books and missing in GSTN. The match tab shows the transactions which matches exactly with the transaction which is pulled from the GSTN portal. Here you can accept the transaction such that it will be moved to the reconcile tab. The partially matched transaction shows the Zoho Books transactions which does not match exactly with that of the transaction which has been fetched from the GSTN portal. Here you can either accept the transaction or you can make the necessary changes and match. Once done, it will be moved to the reconcile tab. The missing in Zoho Books transaction shows the transactions which are present in the GSTN portal but not in Zoho Books. Here you can either create the transaction and match it or simply reject it. So if you click on the reject option, it will be marked as rejected and it will be moved to the reconcile tab. Also, rejecting a transaction in Zoho Books will not remove it from the GSTN portal. The missing in GSTN tab shows the transactions which are available in Zoho Books but not present in GSTN portal. This denotes that the transactions are there in Zoho Books which you have recorded, but your supplier has not yet uploaded in the GSTN portal. Once you have made the necessary actions and pushed the transactions to the reconcile tab, the next step is to mark the return as completed. You can click on the mark as completed button to mark the GSTR2 return as completed. Once you mark the return as completed, the transaction under that return will be locked and you will not be able to make any changes. If you would like to make any changes, you would have to click on mark as open option, make the necessary changes and once again marked as completed. Now let us look into the frequently asked questions on IMS. Which records are available in IMS for action? All the invoices or records and their amendments which is filed by your supplier in is GSTR1 will be available in the IMS dashboard. However, the documents in which ITC is ineligible due to POS rule or section 1604 of CGST Act will not be appearing in the IMS dashboard and it will be moved to the ITC not available section of GSTR2B. Are there any invoices or records where pending action cannot be taken in IMS? Yes, pending actions cannot be taken for original credit notes or if there are any upward amendments of credit notes regardless of the recipient action or the original, and if there are any downward amendments of the credit note if the original was rejected, and downward amendments of invoices or debit notes if where the original was accepted and has been filed in the GSTR3B. What will happen to the documents kept pending in IMS? So the pending transactions will be continued to be in the IMS dashboard until the cutoff date as per section 16(4) of CGST Act 2017, and once these transactions crosses the time limit, then it will be removed from the IMS dashboard. How many times can I regenerate GSTR2B? If you have pushed the data in IMS, then you have to recompute the GSTR2B from portal. Only then the inward data would be visible in GSTR3B filing. As many times the IMS data is pushed, as many times GSTR 2B has to be recomputed. Now, let us look into the GSTR 3B filing. GSTR 3B is a monthly return to be filed by every GST registered business. It contains the consolidated summary of outward supplies, inward supplies and ITC available. The deadline for filing GSTR 2B form is 20th of the following month. For example, you are filing the return for the month of November, then the last date will be 20th of December. If there are no transactions, you would have to file the nil GSTR 3B returns as well. These are the list of taxpayers or businesses which are not eligible for GSTR 3B, and if your business is also one amongst them, then you're not supposed to file GSTR 3B. In August 2024, the GST portal introduced a new RCM liability or ITC statement to help taxpayers manage the reverse charge mechanism liabilities and ITC claims. This feature helps to reconcile any discrepancies between the RCM liabilities declared in the table 3.1D and ITC availed in table 4A2 or 4A3 of GSTR 3B. The taxpayers are required to report any opening balance, either positive or negative, depending on whether RCM liabilities exceeded claimed ITC or vice versa. To streamline the reconciliation process for taxpayers reporting the RCM opening balance, we at Zoho Books have introduced a feature that simplifies the calculation of RCM opening balance in the GSTR 3B section of the GSTR 3B filing in Zoho Books. To access this feature, navigate to the GST filing module, and under GSTR 3B, you will be able to see View RCM Opening Balance button. Upon clicking on this button, in the following page, you will have the option to calculate the reverse charge mechanism opening balance. Once you click on this option, the calculation will be completed, and once it is completed, you will receive an in-app notification and you can verify and update the balance in the RCM liability or ITC statement on the GSTN portal. Additionally, you can view the return period-wise breakdown showing how the opening balance is actually calculated. This will help you in verifying the accuracy of the opening balance. Now, let us learn the steps that are involved in filing GSTR 3B via Zoho Books. To file the GSTR 3B in Zoho Books, navigate to the GSTR 3B summary and click on View Summary button. In the following page, you will be able to see the summary which has been generated automatically based on the transactions which you have recorded in the Zoho Books for that particular period. Before pushing the summary to the GSTN portal, you have to ensure that you have entered the ITC reversed in the GSTR 3B summary. To do so, click on the edit icon shown here. You can fill in the required details under the corresponding fields and hit save. If you have reversed the ITC in the previous month, you can reclaim the applicable ITC in the current return. Here's how. Here again you can enter the ITC reclaimed under the respective fields and click on save. You have to make sure that whatever data that you enter under the reclaim section is also entered under adjust ITC section by clicking on adjust ITC option. Once done, the next step is to push the transaction to the GSTN portal by clicking on push to GSTN button. You can also check the status of the push by clicking on check status button. Once you have pushed the transactions to the GSTN portal, the next step is to make the payment of your taxes. So once you have paid your taxes and cleared all your liabilities in the GSTN portal, you will have to record the cash flow in Zoho Books. And when you mark the file as written, a journal will be automatically created in Zoho Books for offsetting the ITC. So if you have already made the payment to the GSTN portal, you can record it in Zoho Books by clicking on record payment button. Here you have to fill in the details based on the challan which you have generated in the GST portal. Also, if you have integrated the HSBC bank in your organization, you will be able to directly initiate the payment via HSBC in Zoho Books. Or if you have already recorded the GST payment, you can click proceed to file the return. Here you can click on file now button to file the returns directly from Zoho Books, Or if you have already manually filed the returns in GSTN portal, you can click on marked as filed here. Once you have marked as filed the return in GSTR 3B returns in Zoho Books, a journal will be automatically posted to offset your tax liability. So this journal will be posted based on the data which is fetched from the GSTN portal, and it will be posted against all your output and input GST accounts, also your cash ledgers. Also, after filing the GSTR 3B, you have to ensure that you record the GST payment in order to offset your tax liability. Now, let us understand the annual return GSTR 9. GSTR 9 is a handbill return form that businesses in India registered under GST are required to file. It provides a summary of all the transactions, tax paid and other GST related details for the entire financial year. The due date for filing GSTR 9 is typically 31st December of the following financial year. Now let us understand the steps that has to be followed in filing GSTR 9 in Zoho Books. In order to file GSTR 9, navigate to the Annual Returns tab. Generating and filing GSTR 1 returns from Zoho Books is a 4-step process. The first step is to generate and view the return. When you click on View Return button, you will be able to see all the return being generated based on all the transactions which you have recorded in Zoho Books. And if you have done any changes in the transactions, you can click on Regenerate Return button so that the return will be once again generated. Once you have generated the returns, the next step is to fetch and update the return. Once you have generated your return in Zoho Books, you will be able to fetch the auto-calculated GSTR 9 summary from the GSTN portal by clicking on Fetch Auto-Calculate Summary. Once done, the next step is to push the transactions to the GSTN portal. Under GSTR 9 summary, you will be able to see both your HSN-wise summary of outward and inward supplies. Under inward supplies, you will be able to see mismatch in case of if you have not mentioned the HSN or SAC of the items which are mentioned in the purchase transactions. While recording the purchase transactions in Zoho Books, the HSN or SAC of the item is not mandatory to be filled in. Hence, you have to ensure that you mention the corresponding HSN or SAC for all the items in which you are applying tax in order to overcome the mismatch under the HSN-wise summary of inward supplies. After you fetch the summary, you will be able to update the details in Zoho Books. To do so, you can click on the exclamation mark shown under each table, and once done, a table will be opened wherein you will be able to see the transaction values based on the transactions available in Zoho Books and the values which has been fetched automatically from the GSTN portal. So if you wish to make any changes in those values, you can click on the edit icon shown here, make the necessary changes and push the transactions to the GSTN portal. Once you have pushed the transactions to the GSTN portal, the next step is to file the returns. Now let us understand the common errors and FAQs on GST filing in Zoho Books. Why is the value of HSN-wise summary of outward supplies row not equal to the combined value of other rows in the summary of outward supplies GSTR 1 return? This is the formula in which the HSN-wise summary of outward supplies is being calculated. As you all know, the GSTR 1 report also includes the information related to discounts, shipping charges exclusive of tax, TCS and TDS. So, if these values are associated with any one of the transactions, the HSN-wise summary of outward supplies row will not be equal. In this situation, you would have to subtract the discounts, shipping charges exclusive of tax, TCS and TDS from the above formula to calculate the HSN-wise summary of outward supplies. Why are some of my credit notes not showing in GSTR 1? So, if there are any B2C credit notes, then it will not be shown separately in the GSTR 1. Instead, it will be adjusted with the corresponding invoice value. Why is the late fee and interest account showing a negative value? So, for the interest paid and the late fees, we will be debiting the amount to the corresponding interest and late fee account. and will credit the amount from the corresponding cash ledger accounts while populating the offset journal for GSTR 2B when it is marked as filed in Zoho Books. So as there is no source for late fee liability account, it will be displayed in negative. In this case, we suggest you to pass a manual journal by crediting the late fee liability account and debiting the expense account. Here you can choose any predefined expense account or create a new expense account. Let us move into the second part of the session, which is e-invoicing. What is an e-invoice? An e-invoice or electronic invoice is a digital document that is exchanged between a supplier and buyer and validated by the government tax portal. It is proposed for B2B sales transactions. Under electronic invoicing system, an identification number, that is IRN, will be issued against every invoice by the invoice registration portal managed by the GST network. Starting from 1st August 2023, the Government of India has mandated e-invoicing for the businesses and the corporations that have an annual aggregate turnover of 5 crores or more. So, if your turnover is more than 5 crores, then you would have to opt for e-invoicing. The e-invoicing is applicable for B2B supplies exports when supply is done by SEZ for deemed export and the supply which is made to the government. And the transactions which are eligible for e-invoicing is sales invoices, debit notes and credit notes. There has been no limit fixed by the GST system or the GST law to generate e-invoices, but from 1st May 2023 onwards, the taxpayers with turnover equal to or more than 100 crore must generate e-invoices within 7 days of invoice date. But as per the recent notification which we received from the GSTN portal on 5th November 2024, the time limit of 30 days for reporting e-invoices on IRP portal has been extended for taxpayers with annual aggregate turnover of 10 crore and above. And this change will come into effect only from 1st April 2025 onwards. Now let us understand the various steps to generate e-invoices from Zoho Books. The very first step that has to be followed is to register yourself into IRP. To do so, open the official e-invoicing website and click on the registration menu, and from that choose portal login. Enter your GSTN and enter the CAPTCHA shown here. Once done, in the following page you will be able to see all the details relating to your GSTN being automatically calculated. You can click on the send OTP if all the details are correct, and once done you will be able to register yourself in the IRP. The next step is to connect your Zoho Books with IRP. If you create e-Eables directly from Zoho Books, you would have already connected your organization with the e-Able portal. In that case, the same credentials can be used to log into the IRP portal as well. And Zoho Books will automatically use the e-Able portal credentials to connect with IRP as well. Or if you have not been generating e-Eables directly via Zoho Books, and if you are not connected e-Able portal with Zoho Books earlier, then you would have to register Zoho as Zoho Corporation as GST Suvidha provider in the IRP in order to connect your Zoho Books organization with the IRP portal. To do so, you have to log into the IRP and navigate to the API registration menu, and under that you will find an option to add the Zoho as your GSP. Upon adding Zoho as GSP, you will be asked to enter a username and password, and the same username and password only you have to use while connecting e-invoicing in Zoho Books. Now let us understand how we can enable e-invoicing and how we can connect your IRP portal with that of Zoho Books organization using the credentials with which you registered Zoho Corporation as GSP in IRP, and how we can create transactions from Zoho Books and push it to the IRP. In order to enable e-invoicing in Zoho Books, navigate to Settings and click on e-invoicing. Click on Enable e-invoicing button. Here you can choose the your business annual turnover, and based on that the start date will be auto populated. You can also choose any preferred start date. The transactions will be considered as e-invoices only when the date of those transactions is after the start date, and the transactions which are recorded prior to the start date will not be considered as e-invoices. After enabling the e-invoice option in Zoho Books, the next step is to connect your GSTIN with that of the IRP. To do so, you have to click on Connect Now button, and you will be asked to enter the username and password. You have to mention the same username and password via which you registered Zoho Corporation as GSP in the IRP. Once you click on Save and Validate, you will be able to see your GST being connected with IRP. The next step is to start creating the transactions such as invoices and credit notes and pushing it to the IRP. The e-invoicing option or push to IRP option will be shown only for the B2B transactions. When you click on push to IRP button, you will find two options. Either you can push only the invoice details or push both invoice and e-payable details. If you have enabled e-payable in Zoho Books, then you can choose to push the e-payable details to the IRP along with your invoice. This way, you can save time and generate e-way bill as well as IRN for your invoice. When you click push to IRP, you can decide which details you want to send it to IRP. The push only invoice details option. Using this, your invoice will be pushed to the IRP and IRN will be generated for it, and your e-way bill details will not be sent to the IRP. When you click on push both invoice and e-way bill details, you will be asked to enter the transporter's details and the Part B details. The Part A details will be automatically picked up from your invoice. Once the invoice is successfully pushed to the IRP, you will be receiving an in-app notification that it has been successfully pushed, and you will be able to see the IRN being generated. You can also copy the IRN if needed, and the status of the invoice will be changed to pushed. And if you have enabled e-invoicing details in your invoice template, and you will be able to see the e-invoicing details being populated in the corresponding invoice PDF, such as IRN, acknowledgement number, acknowledgement date, and QR code. After pushing the e-invoice to the IRP portal, if you would like to cancel this transaction, you can click on Cancel e-invoice option. So once you click on this Cancel e-invoice option, this transaction will be cancelled in the IRP. So you will be able to see this Cancel e-invoice option only if it has not yet been 24 hours since IRN generation. If it is already been 24 hours since IRN generation, then you will be able to see an option called Mark as Cancelled. So this option will be shown if only it has been crossed 24 hours since IRN generation. Marking it as cancelled will not cancel this transaction in IRP. After 24 hours, the transaction will be synced with the GSTN portal, and you would have to remove that transaction from the GSTN portal manually and simply mark it as cancelled in Zoho Books. Once you cancel a transaction in Zoho Books, the transaction will be marked as cancelled and it will be in void status. You can clone that transaction and generate a new transaction and push it to IRP. When you clone a transaction and create a new one, you cannot make use of the same transaction number. Only a new transaction number will be populated. If in case you mark as cancelled a transaction mistakenly and if you wanted to undo it, you can make use of the recall button option. Once done, the status of the invoice will be again shown as pushed. This recall option is available only when you mark it as cancelled and not when you click on cancel e-invoice option. Also, you will be able to filter the transactions such as pushed for e-invoicing, which shows only the transactions which are pushed to IRP, and yet to be pushed for e-invoicing filter shows the transactions which are yet to be pushed to the IRP, and you can select those transactions in bulk and click on push to IRP option. So at a time you will be able to push 25 invoices to IRP. You can also view the transactions which are failed on e-invoicing. If you would like to export these transactions as JSON and upload it in the GSTN portal for e-invoicing, you can select those transactions and click on export as JSON for e-invoicing and generate the IRN. If you have generated the IRN manually in the IRP portal, then you can come to Zoho Books and update the IRN manually. To do so, you can click on the More button and click on Associate IRN Details. Here you can mention the IRN which you have generated in the IRP, mention the acknowledgement number and acknowledgement date. After entering the IRN, if you have entered any IRN mistakenly, you will also find an option to delete the same. Once you enter the IRN details, the status of the transaction will be changed as manually pushed. Similarly, you can also generate and push the credit notes to the IRP from Zoho Books. Now, let us look into the common errors and FAQs on e-invoicing. This error will be thrown if you do not enter the same username and password via which you have registered Zoho Books as GSP in the IRP. So while enabling e-invoicing in Zoho Books, you have to always ensure you enter the same username and password in Zoho Books as well. E-invoice banner are not shown on the transaction detail page. So the e-invoice banner or push to IRP button will not be shown in the following cases. So if your organization is into SEZ trading, then you will not be able to generate e-invoices. Hence, the push to IRP button will not be shown. And also, if there are any non-taxable items involved in the invoice or credit note, then it is not eligible for e-invoicing. So the push to IRP button will not be shown. Also, since e-invoicing is applicable only for B2B supply, if the customer's GST treatment which is chosen in the invoice or credit note is of unregistered business or consumer, then push to IRP button will not be shown. Also, if you do not have the necessary permission to push the transaction to the IRP, you will not be able to see the push to IRP button. And the push to IRP button will not be shown in the case of bill of supply transactions. And also, as stated earlier, the e-invoice will be generated only for the invoices and credit notes which is recorded after the e-invoice start date. This error will be thrown if you have not entered a valid phone number in the transactions bill from address, which is your organization address. So in this case, you have to ensure that you enter a valid phone number which is between 6 and 12 characters in length in your organization profile. Or if you have enabled branches, you have to verify if you have entered the phone number in the respective branch address which you have chosen in the invoice. This error will be thrown if you have not entered the phone number, or if the phone number field is not between 6 and 12 characters in length in the billing and shipping address of your customer. In this case, you would have to update a valid phone number under the customer address in the customer level. Unit quantity code is not passed or UQC is not as per master. This error will be thrown if you have missed to mention the UQC of the unit for the items which you have chosen in the invoice or credit notes. So in this case, you would have to navigate to the items module, click on that particular item which you have mentioned in the transaction, edit it, and you click on configure units option, and you have to ensure that you have chosen the appropriate UQC for that particular unit. Once done, navigate to that particular invoice and you have to unselect that item and choose the item once again in that invoice. Once done, you can push the invoice to the IRP. The IRP portal will not accept any negative value. So if there are any shipping charges or adjustment value which results in negative figure, then you have to make the necessary changes and ensure that it does not result in negative value, and then push the transactions to IRP. This error will be thrown if the decimal digits of the quantity which is mentioned in the invoice crosses more than 3 digits. So changing the decimal places less than or equal to 3 digits will solve this error. Can we edit the invoice or credit note after pushing it to IRP? Yes, you will be able to edit certain fields after pushing the transactions to IRP. In order to do so, you have to enable editing optional fields in push transaction option under EInvoicing. Once done, for the invoices and debit notes, you will be able to edit the order number, due date, customer notes, custom fields, reporting tabs, terms and conditions, etc. And in case of credit notes, you will be able to edit the reference number, customer notes, custom fields, reporting tags, and terms and conditions. Now we have come to the third part of our session, which is generating e-way bills via Zoho Books. What is an e-way bill? In the GST regime, an e-way bill is an electronically generated document necessary for the movement of goods within the state or outside the state. An e-way bill replaces the way bill, which was a physical document used in the previous VAT system. Now let us understand when an e-way bill is actually necessary. When you move goods of value more than 50,000, irrespective of the mode of transport being used, or when you move any goods outside the state for job work, irrespective of its value, you must generate an e-way bill. Also, when you transport handicapped goods, irrespective of value, you have to generate e-way bill. When you transport goods up to a distance of 50 km, a e-way bill has to be generated with a Part A details alone and does not require Part B details. And during the movement of goods, the person who transports the goods must carry either of the transport document like invoices, bill of supply, a delivery challan with the e-way bill number mentioned on it. Now let's see when an e-way bill is not required. So an e-way bill is not required in the following cases: when you supply goods of value less than 50,000 irrespective of the destination, or when you are transporting goods by non-motorized vehicles, or when the place of departure is from the port, airport, air cargo station, or any station where the clearance is by the customs department, or when you are transporting some exempted goods irrespective of the total value. Now let us understand how we can generate e-way bills directly from Zoho Books. So when you have several e-way bills to be created every day, it is difficult for you to create them by typing necessary details one by one manually in the e-way bill portal. However, you can create e-way bills directly from Zoho Books. It pre-fills the transactions directly and you only have to enter the transporter details to generate the e-way bills. The first step that has to be followed in order to generate e-way bills directly via Zoho Books is that you have to register Zoho Corporation as GSP in the e-way bill portal. To do so, you have to log into the e-way bill portal, click on the registration menu and choose for GSP option. Under that, you will be able to send and verify the OTP. Once done, you will be able to view add or new tab. Under that tab, you can choose Zoho Corporation under GSP name, and you will be asked to generate a username and password. You have to generate the same, mention the same username and password while connecting your e-way bill portal with that of Zoho Books. Now let's see how we can set up the e-way bill module in Zoho Books. To do so, go to settings and click e-way bills and click on connect now against the GSTN for which you would like to connect the e-way bill portal. So here you have to mention the username and password via which you registered Zoho Corporation as GSP in the e-way bill portal. Once done, you would have to click on save and validate option, and you will be able to see your GSTN being connected successfully. Now let us understand the various parts of an e-way bill. An e-way bill consists of two parts. The part A contains of the details of consignor, consignee, supply type, item details and transport mode, whereas the part B contains the transporter details. So if you are initiating the movement of goods and transporting the goods by yourself, you have to furnish both part A and part B details. Or if you have outsourced any transporter, in that case the transporter must furnish the part B details and you can furnish only the part A details alone. And the document types which are supported for e-way bills in Zoho Books is sales invoice, credit note and delivery challan. Before could we generate a e-way bill, let us understand the various transaction types that is involved. The transaction type field in a e-way bill refers to the type of transaction that is being taken place between the parties involved in the movement of goods. The factor that determine the transaction type or bill from, the person or organization sending the goods, dispatch from, the place where the goods are actually being dispatched, bill to, the person or organization where the who placed the order and is paying for the goods, and ship to, the person or organization who will receive the order. The transaction type of the e-way bill is based on the addresses present in the e-invoice, that is the address type of your organization, bill from and dispatch from addresses, and the address type of your customer such as bill to and ship to addresses. The transaction type will be regular if only the bill from and bill to addresses are available in the e-invoice. So in this case, the movement of goods is between you and your customer. Whereas the transaction type will be bill to, ship to if the bill from, bill to, ship to addresses are present in the invoice. In this case, the movement of goods is between you and the third party to whom your customer has requested the goods to be delivered. It is also possible that your customer has requested the goods to be delivered to a different branch of their organization. The transaction type can be bill from, dispatch from if the bill from, dispatch from and the bill to addresses are present in the e-invoice. In this case, the movement of goods is between the third party, that's your vendor, delivering the goods and your customer. It could also be that you're delivering the goods to a different warehouse. Next is combination of 2 and 3. The transaction type will be combination of 2 and 3 if the bill from, dispatch from, bill to and ship to addresses are present in the e-invoice. In this case, the movement of goods is between you and your customer, but the person delivering the goods and the person receiving the goods is a third party. So creation of e-way bills via Zoho Books can be done in two ways. The first way is to generate the e-way bills directly from Zoho Books, and the second way is to export the invoices or credit notes details as JSON or Excel file from Zoho Books, and you can upload it in the e-way bill portal and generate the e-way bills manually. Navigate to the e-way bills module, and the invoice which you have already pushed to the IRP will be shown there, and you will be able to generate the e-way bills for the same. The document type shows the invoices, credit notes and delivery challans which are supported in Zoho Books, for which you can generate e-way bills. Here I have chosen the document type as invoices, and you can choose the location or branch for which you would like to generate the e-way bill. The next option is to choose the customer name. Once you choose the customer name, you will be able to see the list of invoices which you have generated for that customer, and you would have to choose the appropriate invoice. Once done, the IRN of that invoice will be populated, and the address also will be populated from that invoice. You can also view the item details which you have mentioned in that invoice, and then you will be able to mention the transporter details. You can add the transporter by clicking on the transporter drop down and clicking on manage transporter option. So once you click on manage transporter option, a pop-up will appear where you can click on the add new transporter button and add the transporter who will be transporting the goods. Here you can enter the transporter name and the transporter ID. If in case you are transporting the goods by yourself, you would have to mention your name, and in the transporter ID field you have to mention your GSTIN. If you enter the distance as 0, then the e-waybill system will automatically calculate the distance based on the dispatch and the delivery locations, or else you can click on the calculate distance option. So once you click on calculate distance option, it will redirect you to this page wherein you have to enter the dispatch from and the ship to pin code, and based on those pin codes the distance will be calculated by the system, and you can enter the same kilometer while generating the e-waybills in Zoho Books. Once you have filled in the part A details, the transporter details, the next step is to fill the part B details. So this can be filled in only if in case you are moving the goods, or if you have hired a transporter, then the transporter will fill in the part B details. Once done, click on generate option. So the e-waybill will be generated and you will be receiving a notification that e-waybill details have been updated successfully. And once generated, a e-waybill number will be shown and you will be able to verify the part A details which you have entered. You will also be able to see the e-waybill date and the time, and you can perform various other actions in the e-waybill, such as you can print the e-waybill, extend the e-waybill, fetch the e-waybill details from the portal, or cancel the e-waybill. Let us look into each one of these actions in detail. So you will be able to mention the e-waybill number manually in the invoice. To do so, you can click on the add e-waybill details option, and you can either create a e-waybill directly, or you can if you have already generated the e-waybill, you can click on associate e-waybill number. Once done, you will be asked to mention the number and you can save the details. The validity period of an e-waybill which is in generated or expired status can be extended up to 8 hours before or after it expires. For example, if there are any unforeseen delays during the transportation, such as vehicle breakdown or traffic issues, you can extend the e-waybill's validity by clicking on extend validity option shown for the e-waybill which you have generated in Zoho Books. You would have to mention the details as shown here, and once done, the validity of that e-waybill will be extended. The next action which you can perform is that you can sync the e-waybills into Zoho Books from the e-waybill portal by clicking on the fetch from portal option. So once you have generated the e-waybills for your transaction and updated e-waybill number in Zoho Books for the respective transactions, you have to sync your e-waybill module with the e-waybill portal in order to fetch your e-waybill validity details or any update made in the portal regarding the e-waybill. The next action which you can perform is cancellation of e-waybills. Sometimes your shipment might get cancelled, destination might get modified, or there can be some typing mistakes while creating an e-waybill. In such a situation, you can cancel your existing e-waybill within 24 hours from the time of creation and generate a new one. But if the e-waybill has been verified by the officers, then it cannot be cancelled. In order to cancel the e-waybill from Zoho Books, you would have to click on cancel e-waybill button, and it will ask you to enter the reason and remarks. Once done, the e-waybill status will be marked as cancelled. If you would like to generate the e-waybills for the transaction in the later point of time, then you can exclude them by selecting those transactions, and once you exclude the transaction, you can also restore them. Also, you can export the transaction as JSON and upload it in the e-waybill portal and generate the e-waybills directly in the e-waybill portal. Or you can also export the invoice as e-waybill and upload it in the GSTN portal. You can similarly, you can export the credit notes also as e-waybill. The next action that we can perform in an e-waybill is that you can print the e-waybills from Zoho Books. You can to do so, you have to click on the print e-waybill button, and you can print your e-waybill details in a simple format if they are in generated, cancelled or expired status. Now let us look into the common errors and FAQs on e-waybills in Zoho Books. Is e-waybill required for service invoices? No, e-waybill is not required in case of providing services. It is required only for the case of delivering goods. What has to be done by the transporter if the consignee refuses to take goods or rejects the goods for any reason? In this case, the transporter has to issue a sales return. So in Zoho Books, you can record a sales return as credit note, and you would have to generate the EVA bill for the same. Should I have to enter the Part B details of an EVA bill generated using Zoho Books? You can enter the Part B details of an EVA bill if you are transporting the goods by yourself. If not, the transporter will furnish the Part B details. What is the validity of an EVA bill? So the validity of an EVA bill depends on the vehicle type that you're using and the distance mentioned in the EVA bill's Part B details. So if the vehicle type is regular and if the distance is up to 10 kilometers, then the validity will be 1 day, and for every additional 100 kilometers, 1 day will be added. In the case of over-dimensional cargo vehicle type, up to 20 kilometers, the validity will be 1 day, and for every additional 20 kilometer, 1 additional day will be added. This error will be thrown if the transporter ID or transin is not valid or if it is not 15 digit. In that case, you have to ensure that you enter a valid transporter ID, and you can get the transporter ID from the transporter who is going to transport the goods. If in case you are transporting the goods, then you can enter your GSTIN as the transporter ID. How many times can Part B or vehicle number be updated for an EVA bill? So the Part B details or vehicle details can be updated as many times the transporter wants the movement of goods to the destination. So however, the updating should be done within the validity period. Is HSN mandatory to generate EVA bills? Yes, HSN is mandatory to generate EVA bill because for generating EVA bill, you must have associated a taxable goods in the transaction. So for taxable goods, it is mandatory to mention the HSN. Now we have come to the end of the session. Let us quickly have a recap. We started with discussing how we can configure the GST settings in Zoho Books. Then we discussed on how we can file various GST returns via Zoho Books. Also, we discussed on how we can enable e-invoicing and connect your Zoho Books with that of the e-invoicing portal, and start creating the transactions from EVA bill and push the transactions to the IRP. Also, we saw how we can enable EVA bill portal and Zoho Books, and how we can connect your EVA bill portal with that of Zoho Books, and how we can generate EVA bills for directly from Zoho Books, and how we can export the EVA bill details as JSON or from invoices or credit notes and upload it in the GSTN portal for generating EVA bills. Also, we discussed the common queries on GST filing, IMS, and e-invoices and EVA bills.